and National Parents Union, welcome. I hope you're all well. I hope you're all thriving. And so today we have a special guest. But before I bring my special guest out, I just want to share a personal story with you. Yesterday, my 22-year-old daughter called me in the morning from New Hampshire. We usually video chat. And, she was really upset about just some things that people were kind of creating a narrative about her. And so, I had to bring her back to basics. And what that is that since we're a faith-based family, I try to remind her to not trust the source, right? And what is the source? Who are these people? Why does it matter? Who are you? And so it's very interesting that over the time of my children's life, I've always taught them to question the source of information on everything. And when I go all the way back in my Bible readings, I find a very important lesson. And that was when God told Adam not to eat of the forbidden fruit. And he did. And so God comes into the garden and he's looking for Adam. And Adam hid. And he hid and said, well, I hid because I was afraid and I'm naked. And the thing that really captures me the most was God said, who told you that you were naked? And so that's what I told my daughter yesterday. Who told you you were naked? Where is the source of this information coming from? And you know who you are. So everything else doesn't matter. And so I hope that helps your heart to not think in negative ways and internalize what people say about you, because you know who you are and you know what you're capable of. And so I hope that really, really touches your heart. Don't listen, because I asked the same question. Who told you you were naked? And so today, my special guest is Yahaira Lopez. She is the founder of Autism Sprinter. Hi, Yahaira.
Hi.
Hey.
Thank you for having me. Woo.
Oh, thank you for coming. I am so glad that you're here. Can you tell everyone who you are and about Autism Sprinter and how you came to found that?
Yes. So my name is Yahaira Lopez. I am the founder of Autism Sprinter, but most importantly, a mommy of two amazing Twinkies. I started Autism Sprinter back in 2014 because I seen that my child on the autism spectrum needed more TLC from me, right? I used to work for a public school and I worked with other kids. So by the time I got home from working with kids and then coming home to deal with my son who had limited speech and things like that, it was very overwhelming. So I felt like I wasn't dedicating enough time for my son. And it came to a point that I said, you know what? I can't hold other people accountable if I'm not holding myself accountable. And so I decided that the most appropriate thing to do back in 2014 to make sure that I was available for my son, and I also worked as a parent partner with our educational system, was to help my son, and also help the teacher to make sure that she can help my son. And
Right.
so I departed from the public school sector in 2014. I literally created I took one of my bedrooms and turned it into a full-blown classroom. Literally, I watched tons of YouTube channels, like went on Pinterest and literally self-taught myself how to do speech therapies. I taught myself how to do occupational therapy. I taught myself ABA, which is applied behavior analyst techniques.
Yeah.
And tons of, sensory-based activities to help my son develop his speech. And so from there, what I was doing, I was recording them and putting, my videos and stuff on Facebook. And one of my college friends and someone I grew up with was like, hey, you got to do something with that. And I'm like, what? They're like, blog. I'm like, blog? I'm a mommy of two kids. You want me to blog?
Right.
I was like, no, nobody got time for that, right?
Uh-huh.
And so I just continued to, post and record the stuff that I was doing with my son, place it in on Facebook. And then, you know, one of my college friends, Edwin Frias, much love, literally bought me the Autism Sprinter domain and literally created this whole website and everything for me to kind of say, hey, you need to teach other parents who have children with disabilities how they can self-teach and become their children's providers and things like that. And I was like, okay, cool. And like literally that's how Autism Sprinter was birth, was through a village, a village support of people who seen that me sharing my personal story and the things that I did to make sure that I was, held myself accountable as a parent, and demonstrate that I'm a partner to education. That's how Autism Sprinter literally was birthed.
So, I want the parents watching this to understand that all of the things that you self-taught took a process, right? And I'm sure that it took some, failures in certain ways to understand how to master those things. And so talk about how that worked, like that process of developing around that skill in order to effectively teach your kids.
So that process was like an emotional roller coaster. One, because it started with me making a decision that I was going to depart from my job, which right there itself was, I'm like, I can't believe I'm doing this. Jahida, you sure you want to do this? Like, this is, you're going to be struggling financially. Like, so there was that, like, trying to channel that energy. And then literally endless, like literally so many sleepless nights, right? Because when parents get a diagnosis of any sort, it feels like a death sentence, right?
Mm-hmm.
Feel like, oh my goodness, what did I do wrong? And you start going through this self-blame process, and you start blaming yourself for either not eating healthy or all these things. Like, you start thinking all types of weird stuff. Right. And so I went through that process and stayed up all night researching stuff. And then, I'm like, I'm reading all things about autism and, all these characteristics. But then at one point I realized that I was investing so much of my energy on textbook smart, autism and what this diagnosis, but I never thought about my child being an individual. Right. And what autism was for him. So autism for him wasn't what I was learning in the DM5s or anything like that, or what I was reading when I couldn't sleep at night, even with melatonin. And, I was like, wait, I need to start seeing my child as an individual. And that's how literally it started. I had to start looking at my son totally different and stop putting this label and casting this label upon him and hindering what I felt like I was hindering his ability to grow. So I just literally, took the process of understanding autism in a different perspective, but it was led by my son and what it meant for him and what he needed from me and what he needed from his educators.
Right. And so, that negative self-talk, right? That inserted value system, and even some things that we probably experienced over a period of time, just going to that place. It's very difficult to stop that tape loop once it starts. That's why I started with the question, who told you were naked, right? And so it's always challenging when you are in that process. What did you do to get yourself out of that stinking thinking, like we talked about?
That process, I think, was the hardest process, because I would say the first year of staying home with my son and maxing out credit cards and, going through depression, literally, eating my depression and all that stuff. It took literally my village.
Yes.
So if it wasn't for my mom, their paternal grandmother, my nieces, my nephews, all these important people in my life to remind me that it was okay for me to breathe. Literally, breathe.
Right?
It's okay. Like, you're tripping, Jahida. Chill out. And if it wasn't for, and also my parents, I grew up in a religious household. So my mom and my dad, who continuously go to church going and praying, all that
Yep.
was very instrumental. Taking
Shout out
breaks.
to the family members
Yes.
that are like lifeline. We
Yep.
thank you, grandmas, grandpas,
Yep.
uncles, cousins, nieces and nephews. Even my grandkids bring me joy in ways. Sometimes I just see their faces and I'm like, I am so glad. Extended family, friends, you matter in that whole ecosystem, the village,
Yep.
right? And so I just want to take a pause and say thank you,
Yeah.
and we appreciate you.
Yeah, it literally, between my mom and their grandmother, um I I honestly probably wouldn't be sitting here today in front of you guys and sharing my story. And if it wasn't for my friends who believed in my work, and pushed me to say, hey, do something with this. More, we need to see more parents that are active, because there's always this like narrative of parents are not involved. The parents
Right.
are, and so if it wasn't for the people that believed in me, I wouldn't be here today. And it's at least in this space of being a founder of an organization and empowering parents to understand that it starts with you. It starts with you
Yes.
becoming a partner to education, you becoming a partner to your providers, you becoming a partner to your doctors and the people who service your child in any form of capacity. So it was understanding my self-worth as a parent, that I am powerful, that just because I'm not Dr. Jahida Lopez does not mean that I'm not a doctor. Just because I'm not Miss Lopez in a classroom, doesn't mean that I'm not a teacher. Or
Right.
it's just kind of redefining my role and understanding that all things shift and work with my collaboration, with my partnership, and that's how it kind
Exactly.
of worked.
And so, this level of agency and advocacy that it takes for parents during IEP process is so fierce. I always talk about how, when I first started going even to 504 meetings and IEPs, and I walk in like, is this court? Like, am I on trial? Why is there me and all of you guys? And, by the time I finished that process, I was kicking people out of my meeting. I didn't invite you. You weren't on the list. What are you here for? You don't speak. You can go do something else, or we can reschedule this. People looking at their clocks. I'm like, stop the meeting. Do you have somewhere to be? Because my child is important. And if you're watching the time, then we can pause right here and come back to this. But all parents are not able to go in to the meeting and set the tone and take control and understand their rights, and not sign that dotted line. I don't, I've never signed right there. I'm like, no, let me take this back and take it to, some other people. I'm going to talk about it, then I'll bring it back. So talk about how you're able to teach parents to advocate during the IEP process.
So I think the IEP process, as I always say, feels like a mob sit down. So it kind of like, yo, we're gonna have a good conversation or we're not.
Right.
Sometimes you gotta do all the hand, talking like
right.
And then you gotta be like, okay, mom, calm down.
Right.
I just think that what I've taught, and just from my personal journey, is that you don't know what you don't know. And if you don't know what you don't know, when people know that you don't know, it would be helpful if people kind of teach you or give you an avenue to start learning that. And so how I've operated with Autism Sprinter is to first meet parents where they are.
right.
Making sure that the first thing is to make sure that parents understand it's okay. You're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing. You're not a doctor. You're not a nurse. You're not none of these people. You birthed that child, so that automatically qualifies you for everything.
Exactly.
Principals, nurses, all of that. You own those roles at no cost, at no pay to you, right? You own those roles. And so understanding that, teaching parents to understand their wealth and what they're worth, and that they're the most powerful person in any space. But how to use your power is different, because you use your power by saying, I'm here to work with you. I'm here to help you help my child. How can I help you help my child?
Mm-hmm.
We collaborate? How can we partner to making sure that I not only advocate for my child, but I'm advocating for you as a person who is teaching my child, who's providing a service to my child? How can I help you make sure that you, one, have the tools that you need to do your job? How can I help you find different strategies to help my child? How can I help you help me and we help him? You know what I mean? And making sure that my children are the main focus of the conversation. Starts with my child and it ends with my child. And so, but most importantly, again, is meeting parents where they are, because parents are already overwhelmed. And so my son who has autism, and I have my other twin who has ADHD. So we're talking about two different elements. Like my son, like right now with this COVID-19, my son on the autism spectrum, he's in a happy space, right? Where he's not in a classroom with a sensory overload. You know, he's not like anxious. He's in a calm, very chill, laid back environment. Where my other son with ADHD, I'm like, oh my goodness, like please open the doors. Like, can he just go? Can he be the only one? Like, like I'll even stay in the building. You know what I mean? And just he needs that social ability to kind of get out there, some movement, and just, you know, being in a different space, right? So just understanding that, you know what I mean? Understanding that parents are overwhelmed. You know, they're trying to do what they can do with what they've never probably have ever thought that they were needed to do on a full-time basis. And so to me, it's just, again, meeting people where they are, meet parents where they are. You know, some parents require a little bit more TLC than others, while some, you know, you give them the tools that they need and they pick it up like this. Or you just have parents who, you know, for example, you know, I'm not a parent with a child with autism who is severely autistic, who's nonverbal, who's stealing diapers, who requires a lot of intensifying support. So to me, I can speak a little bit different. Imagine a parent with that level of parenting that they have to do. And if they have multiple other children, let's say other children may have other disabilities or may not. And in addition to that, run a household. And thinking about those dynamics, you know, makes conversations more smoother, more open, and meeting people at the level that they are and able, and in order to engage them and support them in a way that's going to be beneficial for them.
You know, and so I have a little pause for a moment of comedy, because like I told you, I brought my little garden family with me, right? And see, my garden family is the frogs, you know, if you feel froggish leap, you know, kind of terminology. So, this one would be me, you know, laid back, like, and it took me a while to get there, you know. That frog right there is the frog of shock. You know what I mean? And I always talking about this one, right? And so I always think, like, I wonder what kind of froggishness I'm gonna deal with today. You know? I look at my little frog figurines, and you know, because when we're fighting this battle, so many people try to oppose and attack, and we're like, wait, we're parents. Okay, fighting for what's right for our children. And so I had to bring some comedy into my day when I think about the amount of attack just for fighting for your children's rights. And so, parents, we totally understand the battle, the struggle for your children's IEP implementation, your children's rights. We do not want you to give up. I brought that in just to add a little bit of comedy, but at the same time, it's not funny. The fight is real, it's fierce, it's a battle, and we're all here to support and help you guys through that process, wherever you're at, wherever you're at. You don't have to be the expert. You just know your kid, and because you do know your child best, you are their expert. Because I always like to say, I had my kids at Sharp Mary Birch, and I know who was in the room, and none of these people were there. Right. And so, and I didn't see them sign the birth certificate either. So let me set the tone and tell you about my child. And then let's come to an agreement how you could best support my child or my grandchild. And, I want to just pick up on what you said about your one son has autism and your other son has ADHD. And it's really interesting how, they interact and see things and perceive things and then externalize them. And my grandson has both. He has autism, ADHD, and cognitive auditory processing deficit and a seizure condition, right? And the other day, he told me, Grammy, I'm never going back to school. I was like, okay, he was like,
that's what you want to do. That's how you feel.
I don't know. So it's interesting, because you would think like, okay, he would be ready to get out, and he's like, nope, never, ever. And I was like, oh, we're going to have this talk, So talk about what's Autism Sprinter doing now during COVID lockdown?
So with limited resources, right? Because I think that the needs that most parents who have children with disabilities, what they're looking for is to continue to get the services that they were getting prior to this disruption. They want to continue to get help with speech. They want to continue to get help with OT. They want to, they want to continue those type of form of services, because not only are the school systems, kind of going through this shift, service providers are forced to do telehealth now. You know what I mean? So it's a complete disruption of what you're typically used to and what your child who may survive off of those rigid routines, right? So they're completely off of their routine. So what we're doing at Autism Sprinter is focusing on mental health, right? Mental health is critical. And we're making sure that parents continue to remember you're doing what you need to do. If you could do more, do your thing. If you can't, totally get it. If you want to, if Google Classroom or whatever form of learning your child is doing is working, hey, go for it. And it's working. If it's not, don't trip, just figure it out. We're going to figure it out. And just prioritize laughter, prioritize sanity, prioritize making sure that you're able to still feed your children, prioritize the true needs of your family. And so we're just focusing on mental health. We're also offering a Parent Power live stream series, which you was our first host.
Yay!
Awesome.
Shout out to Autism Sprinter.
And so, giving parent-to-parent content, parent and parent engagement, parent and parent support, and continuing to empowering parents as experts, as as the people who truly understand what their children need. And also this other part about it is making sure that parents are able to communicate their stressors in a productive and collaborative manner. And how do we kind of move past all this that's going on, and how do we kind of figure out strategies to work with our children with the limitations, and kind of still trying to, communicate with school districts to see, hey, what else can you do? Is there anything more, anything less? Just overall focusing on a parent and their way of, being able to handle and manage certain things. Say hi.
Hey, baby. And so, how has that communication with districts been for your parents? And I'm sorry, my internet's getting a little choppy.
I'm hearing both good and bad. I'm hearing, some parents saying that they haven't heard anything from their school districts, that their children didn't get Chromebooks and, things like that. And then I'm hearing parents who are saying, hey, no, listen, my child is rocking and rolling. We have morning meetings. We still have morning meetings. We still have virtual learning. And so I think it's an array of different perspectives. And I think that, which is great to me. I love to hear positivity more than anything. And I also kind of feel bad for the parents that are really struggling with just simple access, of simple, of federal law of FAPE and IDEA and those things that are, somewhat not happening. And so, my focus
or is even not having a Chromebook, right?
Yeah.
So they're not even able to access any kind of, teacher or anything. I mean, it's really difficult when that's your point of access and you don't have it, and so, tell people where you are and how they can find you.
I am in Massachusetts, Boston, what, Roxbury, in Roxbury, you know what I'm saying? But I'm from Boston. I'm in Mass. They can find me on all social media handlings at Autism Sprinter. You can visit our website. I don't really use the website, to be honest with you. I'm going through the process of changing hosting companies, and that's been a complete nightmare. So about that. But if you want to find us on social media, which is mainly what we use for communication, check out our social media handlings. We also have a Facebook group that is specifically designed for parents, providers, caregivers, to have parent-to-parent conversations or providers-to-parent conversations. We also have a few autistics in the space, which also kind of help, for those autistics who are verbal and have the ability to communicate. We have autistics in our Facebook group who have been very instrumental in teaching parents about growing up autistic and their perspectives, and teaching parents, because parents always need to learn. Everything is a learning curve. And so, and if you want to follow me personally, you can find me at I am a momvicate on all social media handlings, on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. A little bit more personal, content from me, and but they pretty much all aligned in the same space.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, that's where you can find me. And I'm always here to be supportive, bridging the gap between parents and school districts, and how we can serve a better purpose, through the good, the bad, the ugly. We're here to be on the same page and work as a village to making sure that equity is just not a word that we use on daily content, but something that we actually exercise.
I heard that. And so thank you for coming to Managing Day to Day and sharing about Autism Sprinter, sharing a little bit of your story. I appreciate what you guys are doing. And so if you need to contact me, you can contact me via email, Christina@npunion.org. You have been watching Managing Day to Day with me, Christina Laster, and National Parents Union. I hope you're all well. I hope you're all thriving. I'll see you tomorrow. Same place, same time. Goodbye, America's beautiful children. We love you, and we'll talk to you soon.